Happy to be here today. Just first of all, by way of introduction, my name is Marc Morano, and I've been working on this issue since the early 2000s. I've been made environmental issues are my passion, so I'm here to try to present a realistic realism view without the hysteria of man-made global warming. Summations for the public. Climate change is governed by hundreds of factors, variables. The idea that we can manage it by selecting at the margins one politically selected factor, carbon dioxide, is as misguided as it gets. It's scientific nonsense. This is UK scientist Philip Stott, who was in the first film Climate Hustle. And this explains it because it's not about it's CO2 is going up, we're all doing. No, CO2 is counteracted by literally hundreds of other factors. Even the climate activists, scientists admit this. Another study actually started with 10,000 plus scientists survey, whittled it down to 77 anonymous scientists. We don't know their names, their affiliations, their views. They asked them two questions that many climate skeptical scientists would agree with. And that came up to the vaunted 97%. Keep in mind, 97% of scientists in this instance wasn't even 97 scientists. It was 77 anonymous scientists. 1 billion people don't have running water and electricity estimated, and the United Nations is doing everything possible through the Climate Fund and through repressing fossil fuel projects to keep them poor. In fact, I interviewed a South African development activist. This is at one of the UN climate summits when they had it in Durban, South Africa. They're always in nice exotic locations. And he said that the United Nations is going to pay the governments of the world who are best able, those governments will get the most climate funds who are best able to keep their citizens locked in poverty. One has to free oneself from the illusion that international climate policy is environmental policy. It has almost nothing to do with environmental policy. Gee, why don't you tell that to Greta and all the high school kids and school kids skipping class that this is all bull bleep? This is what the UN's real agenda is. This is shocking. Should everyone have their own personal carbon quota? Calls grow for emission allowances. Fight climate change with every swipe. A new debit card monitors your personal sustainability score. New monitoring card enables tracking of carbon footprint on every purchase. MasterCard and the United Nations have joined forces. The World Economic Forum loves this because this card will monitor and cut off your spending when you hit your carbon dioxide max. Climate lockdowns. The Net Zero report urges behavioral changes to fight climate. A quote, shift away from private car use, upper speed limits, and thermostat controls, limits on hot water. Does this sound like a world you want to live in? It's choosing deprivation for yourself. UK funded report, absolute zero urge climate aversion to climate lockdown. Stop flying, no new roads, airport closures, stop eating beef, lamb, stop doing anything that causes emissions. And here's the kicker. Regulate carbon dioxide. Humans, we inhale oxygen, we exhale carbon dioxide. Regulate CO2 similar to asbestos. British Medical Journal calls for meat and dairy hikes to fight climate change. Meat consumption in North America must fall 80%, substantially fewer journeys by car. You're hammering people. This is what the climate goal is. Force them at home, force them to essential travel, make meat, hamburgers, steaks so high they'll have to eat the fake processed meat that they've been cranking out. Canadian Magazine, shift away from relying on private vehicles entirely. This is the UK transport minister. Owning a car is outdated 20th century thinking. We must move to shared mobility to cut carbon emissions. Electric vehicles won't save us. We need to get rid of cars completely. New York Times tells us critical thinking can only lead to misinformation. You think, I want to think for myself. No, that's a rabbit hole of misinformation. Forget critical thinking. It's not helping because we're getting misinformation. Forbes magazine, you must not do your own research when it comes to science. Just trust the experts. The United Nations, trust them. They'll tell you what the deal is. Don't question authority. We're not like that anymore. We just need to be obedient. Slate magazine, it's time to give up on facts. If all the other stuff I mentioned fails, then just give up on the facts. At least do it temporarily. How about 2 weeks to give up on facts? They say lay them down temporarily because of a more useful weapon. Emotion. It's hard to imagine a better control lever than carbon dioxide to essentially control society. You're trying to control everything from your transportation, how you live, what you eat, how you fly, your mobility, down to every last detail. So I welcome you to do continued open research, interview scientists, professors. We should never shut down debate, no matter how implausible or no matter how someone else says that can't be or that's not valid or something. Because what we've learned from ClimateGate scandal and the whole UN, They are gatekeepers. They keep out anything that's against their narrative. Climate Depot, about the intimidation of all these scientists, how they were essentially deplatformed, canceled, stripped of anything for dissenting, for having the daring to speak up. And one of the key things on that is we see that happen in real time, and you can't even read about it on Facebook or Twitter or see a video on YouTube anymore. It's not allowed unless they follow the government narrative. It's just frightening, but this is the world in which we live right now. But if you look at the amount of energy produced from fossil fuels versus green energy, it's just green energy is just a fantasy at the moment. I'm not discounting that there may be some breakthrough in solar technology or breakthrough in wind technology down the road or breakthrough in a battery technology. But I think it was Bjorn Lomborg who just today did the analysis. In Europe alone, battery backup for solar and wind power is enough, I think, to power Europe for 1 minute and 29 seconds, or like 1.5 minutes. That's all the battery. And then after that, you have to go, when the wind's not blowing and the sun's not shining, you have to go to fossil fuel backup, diesel generators, gas generators. So it's just an illusion, this green energy. There's many cycles, longer term, shorter term. And this is the kind of research that gets suppressed in the climate community, because you're not going to get money to study natural climate cycles. This is what's we need a lot more of, and we need a lot more voice to these studies and a lot more prominence, and we need academia to take them seriously, but there's no money in it. As I said, who decides who gets the money? Bureaucrats in Washington, politicians, academia, and they're going to get the money that's going to get them published. They're going to get the money that's going to say carbon dioxide is the problem. I used to go on ABC News and CNN and debate regularly climate, energy. It wouldn't even be an option now. It's not even on the table. They would never allow a debate. They've actually stated publicly that anyone who dissents from the man-made global warming narrative of the United Nations is essentially akin to a Holocaust denier. So their goal is just to demonize, deplatform, and get rid of us. And it has worked. We no longer exist in the mainstream media. And what I mean by we is climate skeptics. Anyone who dissents no longer exists in the mainstream media.